You have reached the deepest depths of the internet. If it is greatness you seek, you've come to the wrong show. If it's about not wasting time, don't worry, you're never going to get your time back. If it's knowledge you seek, just be aware, any knowledge gained here is going to be minuscule. So now it's time for Accost the Field with Tony Gerdeman on the Ozone Radio Network.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Accost the Field. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr and our producer Shannon Sommers. Shannon, how are you doing today?
Thank God it's Friday, and it's starting to feel like spring.
Yeah, it's very nice out. Tom, how are you doing? You enjoying the weather?
I am loving the weather. I haven't looked outside recently. I assume it's, not snowing anymore, which is nice. That counts as beautiful weather right now, so I'll take it.
Just wait until later next week.
Me, I am chilling on the oval right now, just soaking in the rays, playing some frisbee, watching the dogs run around, yelling at kids for riding their bikes on the oval. I mean, not supposed to be doing that. And just got a notebook, writing some poetry, trying to seem, like sure of myself and
the Harbaugh poetry.
No, not Jim Harbaugh poetry. Like stuff that is rhymes and is heartfelt and shows that I can emote.
What rhymes with
and
khakis?
I'm not a robot.
Hacky.
So today's show is Tom, did I say hello to you?
Probably. We talk a lot. It doesn't matter.
we talked before the show. It's all right. Today's show is a preview of the Ohio State spring game, which is Saturday afternoon, and whether the rain might hold out, might not. But this is our first chance to see the Buckeyes, last chance to see the Buckeyes. So, the thing about the spring game is there's always something you want to see, certain things you want to see. So I thought we would just go run down the line and position by position what we're looking forward to seeing on Saturday. And we'll treat this as sort of the spring game preview. But then at the end, we will have some spring game predictions, and including some game picks. And the trouble with that is we don't know who are on the teams. So this is going to be some really probably our most difficult analysis ever. But I think we'll do all right. I don't want to give any spoilers, but I'm leaning towards the Scarlet team. Tom, do you have any inkling?
I thought we were saving this for the end to really tease the listeners to get our insights. Oh, I have a very definite pick. I'm feeling very confident about my pick, so you're definitely going to want to stick around for that.
All right, Shannon, do you feel good about your pick?
I'm just going to pick against Mark May. He's saying the Buckeyes are going to lose today. They're just tomorrow.
That would be awesome if the Big Ten Network got Mark May to do the color, maybe Joe Tessitore to do the play-by-play. That would be, and you know how they have like the Final Four has Homer broadcasts. They should have hater broadcasts, and I think the ratings would be awesome because people would get so angry. And
Mark May, Clay Travis, and Paul Feinbaum.
I think that would be fun to listen to. Like I said, we'll go position by position. Now, this spring has been the quarterback battle is the most publicized thing for the Buckeyes, with Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins competing for the job. We know the stakes. If Joe Burrow doesn't win the job, he is perhaps transferring or at least weighing his options. But the thing is, I don't think we're going to see a lot of Haskins and Burrow. Maybe one half of football for the both of them. Maybe a little more. I mean, what do you think in terms of playing time for those guys?
That's usually about what you see with guys who are not returning starters. When it's a returning starter, you figure you're going to see them for like a series or two, and that's about it. With those guys, they want to see how they play. They want to give them some meaningful time. See if they have early jitters and they work those out, whatever it is. But yeah, I would be very surprised if we saw either of them after halftime or maybe middle of the third quarter. But I mean, they want to see some of the other quarterbacks. They want to see Martell. They want to see Corey Curtis and the walk-on, who's going to be the fourth stringer if Matthew Baldwin's hurt this year. They're going to want to get him some action in front of the stadium, in front of some people. So you're going to have, I think, about a half as a pretty good guess for them.
I didn't read the email. Is Cardale coming to the game?
Cardale was not listed on the email that Ohio State sent out. Thank you for reading. You know who is going to be here? JT Barrett.
Oh,
so wouldn't it be exciting to see JT Barrett play in an Ohio State spring game? That would be worth sticking around for.
The reason I mentioned Cardale is because he has a title to defend in terms of the halftime long distance throw that he's won for maybe, I don't know, the last 3 or 4 seasons. So Shannon, I'll ask you, are you taking, if Cardale is there, are you taking Cardale or are you taking Dwayne Haskins?
That's going to be a close one. I'm not really sure. I haven't really thought about it, to be honest with you.
Shannon, it's a hypothetical about a halftime competition. Just pick something. It doesn't matter. Just sound like you know what you're talking about. Haven't you figured this out from Gerd and I? All you have to do is sound like you know what you're talking about.
We're just going to stick for my hate that apparently I have for Haskins that everybody seems to think. So I'm going Cardale Jones. Cardale Jones.
Great. Here comes another 1-star review because Shannon does not like Dwayne Haskins.
Well, he did bring him back double digits over Michigan. So,
gosh, can you say something bad about Joe Burrow? Maybe we can get a 2-star review from that guy.
Yes, Joe Burrow will not be going to Nebraska if he transfers.
Now, what I'm hoping to see, maybe looking forward to, is maybe an entire game from Tate Martell. Or not an entire game, but plays into the third and fourth quarter, which is also, he'll be running for his life from being protected by an offensive line that is mostly walk-ons at that point. I don't know. They've got enough scholarship offensive linemen at this point to where maybe they can keep most of them in there. But Tom, for me, I don't want to see Tate Martell in a black jersey. I want him to be live, and I guarantee he wants to be alive as well. Like the Tyrannosaurus Rex in Jurassic Park, he doesn't want to be fed. He wants to hunt. And we need to see Tate Martell live, correct?
It would certainly make the game a lot more interesting if he was live. His skill set is such that it probably won't necessarily translate all that well if if this is two-hand touch on him. Because he is... I mean, the phrase people have used is the make you miss in a phone booth, where if you're playing two-hand touch, you're down if you're in a phone booth. If he can, if he is live and he can spin, juke, dip, dodge. I haven't seen dodgeball long enough. I don't remember what the 7 Ds of dodgeball were, but dip, dive, something else. Doesn't matter. If the defense is throwing wrenches at him and he can't dive, dodge them, then that makes it a little less exciting. It's still, I mean, let's stay on brand here. That is still going to be the most exciting part of Saturday, is seeing Tate Martell, because we've seen Haskins, we've seen Burrow in game action. We haven't really seen anything of Martell for a year. So, and we've heard a lot about him. So that's certainly what I'm most excited about. I don't know what they're going to do. He's been in a black no-contact jersey all spring when we've seen him in practice. So I sort of assume that they probably will have him in a no-contact jersey again on Saturday. Probably. Because if Burrow does transfer, then Martell's your second-string quarterback. And I don't know if you can risk him getting hurt if he's, potentially your backup and the only other guy behind him is either Matthew Baldwin, who's hurt, or Corey Curtis, who's a walk-on. So they may keep the black jersey on him solely because of that. Because you got to remember, Urban Meyer is an Earl Bruce disciple, and Earl Bruce suffered one of the most famous OSU spring game injuries when Mike Tomczak broke his leg in 1984. And, I would assume Urban Meyer was not there that year. Urban Meyer didn't show up for another couple of years, but I would assume that was probably drummed into his head by Earl Bruce at some point, protect your quarterbacks in the spring game.
So you're saying if Tate Martell is not in a black jersey, then Joe Burrow is the starter? Did I read that correctly?
That would be some really spectacular tea leaf reading. I would, I would have a story ready to go where if we see Martell in like a red or a white jersey, just go ahead and publish Joe Burrow will be the starter. That I think I can't see where you could possibly go wrong with that.
My theory is that they'll put him in the black jersey because they know if they don't, he'll win the job. Shannon, correct?
Yes.
Because now, if they don't want Tate Martell to win the job right now, because then, you might lose two quarterbacks. So they're going to have to handcuff him and sort of just keep that from happening, which is, it's unfair. Unfair to Tate, unfair to Ohio State fans, but, it is what it is. I remember a couple weeks ago when we talked to the quarterbacks, Joe Burrow said that, the spring game isn't really that important. It's everything else. And I'm starting to side with him, even though I think we talked last week, could this be the decider? And I don't see this being really any kind of decider, especially if it's raining and they're only playing in the first half with who knows if they have the same offensive line, split squads, all of this stuff. So, Tom, are you in on that as well? That people should not be putting too much stock, if any, in the spring game performance for Burrow and Haskins?
I think people outside the program are going to put a huge amount of stock in it. I think people inside the program are probably going to put very little. Because, people outside the program, this is like the only data point that most people have between the end of the Cotton Bowl and really the start of the Oregon State game. Like, this is it. This is the time that you are going to see these players on the field in anything other than, snappily edited highlight reels on Twitter from that Ohio State puts out. Like, this is going to be by far the most you get to see any of these guys in a 9-month span. So fans are going to put a ton of emphasis on this. And even for us, this is at this point at least half of the time that we're going to get to watch these guys this spring. So we are probably, just because of that, probably going to tend to overrate it a little bit. But for the team, it's one of 15 practices this spring. Maybe it counts a little more than the other 14 because they want to see how these guys are going to do in front of a crowd of 70,000 or whatever it is. But it is just one of 15 practices, and they evaluate everything they say on and off the field. So, yeah, this counts. But for the guys inside the program, this is not going to be the end all and be all. Even though it'll seem like it to people who this is the only information they have, the only time they've seen these guys this spring.
But there is also nothing to say that what we see in the game won't also be how the spring has played out. So maybe Joe Burrow lights it up and, we make too much of it, but maybe it's because he's been the best quarterback all spring. And so I say that to sort of cover ourselves when something good does happen for one of the players and we jump on that guy and write about it and say, looks like he won the job or he did this or he did that. Maybe we're right. That's what maybe we're right to jump to those conclusions. But as Urban Meyer said, he owes Joe Burrow an answer. We will talk to Urban after the game. We will talk to him the couple days after the game as well. Maybe a decision will be made by then, or it should be, so that Joe Burrow knows what he's doing, and then we'll go from there. But to this point, we have no idea in terms of who is. Nobody has stepped forward, and so this is going to be our one opportunity to confirm our thoughts or to prove ourselves wrong on who we think is ahead. But I don't we mentioned a week or so ago, like none of us really has anybody ahead by much of a margin. Certainly not enough of a margin to where the spring game, even in our feeble minds, would sway things one way or the other. One area where there isn't much of a battle, even though there is just as much of a competition, is running back. J.K. Dobbins and Mike Weber are the 1A, 1B, getting an equal amount of reps this spring, according to Tony Alford. Alford was asked if those two will play much, and he said they'll play. He doesn't know how much. Probably don't expect them to play much because they're so valuable, which means we'll get to see more of Antonio Williams, more of Master Teague. But the thing about the spring game, Tom, is there's never a lot of running, and the running that they do is with offensive line who is, like we said before, split. It could be a third teamer, a first teamer, and a walk on. Who knows what the offensive line is going to look like? So I'm not expecting much from the running backs in terms of the running game, but I'm interested to see how what I'm looking forward to, or what I'm looking for is to see how they are as pass catchers in the flats, how those quarterbacks get them the ball in the flats, and do they lead them in a position to continue running? Do they make it a difficult catch for the running backs? Because, Tom, I don't expect to see much running from the actual running backs.
I don't either. That's kind of been a recurring theme of these spring games for most of the last few years. To me, Master Teague is the guy I'm most interested to see because he's just someone we haven't really seen yet. But even for him, I don't know how much you can draw conclusions on what is he going to be like as a runner. Because of all the offensive line limitations you just laid out. The thing that I'm interested in with him, and this is like the most hashtag B1G answer, is I'm interested in what he does as a pass blocker to see how he stacks up there. Because that's one of those things that you can look great as a running back, but if you can't pass block, you can't play. That would be something that if he looks like they're obviously not gonna blitz a ton, I wouldn't expect during the spring game. But if he gets a chance to pick up a rusher, I just want to see how he does with that. Like that's the kind of little thing that it's gonna be something that no one's really paying attention to, that could be one of those little underrated things just keep an eye on, because that's the kind of thing that can get you on the field as a freshman or keep you off the field as a freshman.
We may also get to see how he does run blocking if there's two back sets out there, or if there's some quarterback runs. Anything, Shannon, that you're looking forward to watching with the running backs?
I'm definitely wanting to see, like Tom just said about the the pass blocking, if they're going to be able to, especially since the offensive line is going to be such a hodgepodge, which we'll get into later. But, looking forward to seeing Teague and Williams.
I wonder if we'll see any home runs from Weber and Dobbins, or Williams or Teague. And if we do, whoever the middle linebacker is at that point is not going to be winning the job. We can jump to that conclusion and just run with that one, because that's the fun of spring football. The receivers and the H-backs, I guess I'm interested to see how DeMario McCall does catching the ball out of the backfield, out of the slot. Does he look natural? Does he fight the football? How does he do in traffic? What does he do after the catch? And, this is going to be our first time seeing him healthy, he says, really since he's been a Buckeye, fully healthy. And he looked pretty good as a true freshman, and he looked good later in the year last year. But this will be an opportunity to see what he can do at full strength. So I'm looking forward to that. And a guy we've talked about before, Elijah Gardner at receiver, we have seen nothing from. Heard some good stuff from Marcus Williamson. Is he a deep threat? And then the other guy that we've seen a couple times in spring look good is Jalen Harris. So, Tom, those are the three things I'm looking forward to watching this weekend. What do you have?
Those are my three guys that I had written down as well.
Awesome.
For pretty much those exact. We must be right. If we agree, we must be right. The only other thing I'd have on there is, again, with Jalen Harris, we saw him flash in, red zone drills and catching touchdowns and looking pretty good catching the ball. We saw like 2 reps of him in a blocking drill, and he didn't look like he was blocking the way the other wide receivers are blocking in that drill. And again, it's 2 reps in practice, 8 of 15 or whatever it was. So I don't want to draw too many conclusions, but that's something I'm going to be watching. If they're running the ball, if they throw, one of those kind of flare screens or something like that out to, to say DeMario McCall, how does Jalen Harris do blocking on the outside? Because that, again, you can be a great pass catcher, but if you can't block, you can't play. So that's what I'm interested to see from him, because I feel like we've seen enough in practice that I'm pretty intrigued at his pass catching. I want to see how well-rounded his game is, because I feel like we don't have enough information on that yet to know really how much of a contribution he can make this fall. But yeah, I also had Gardner on my list for the same reason, and DeMario McCall just because DeMario McCall is always fun. So we must be right.
And there are so many veterans at receiver that they're not going to play much. Some of them may not play at all. So it's a limited number of things to keep your eye on. Shannon, anything different on your side? Anything else you wanted to add about the receivers?
No, I'm just excited to see the youth and want to see a healthy McCall come out of spring, so that way he's not going to be hopefully getting set back or anything.
I mean, he really has an opportunity. This whole spring has been an opportunity to show that he belongs with Paris Campbell and KJ Hill, arguably the 2 most valuable receivers. And it's going to be tough for him to get snaps. But if he's effective with the ball, Urban Meyer every year puts his list of 10 playmakers. If McCall is one of those 10, then you find a place to put him, to get him the ball. And, we'll get to see what he does in the spring. Interestingly, we'll move to tight ends. We saw Rashad Berry on the practice field on Monday, and he's back in his number 13 jersey. He had been in 38 all this spring, which to me seems like a punishment number. Sometimes players, like Damon Arnett, are in numbers that they weren't in last year, ugly numbers. 38 is an ugly number. And so Rashad Berry was back at 13. So, Tom, that tells me that we mentioned the week before, we need to hear something about Rashad Berry. Somebody needs to say something about Rashad Berry doing well, doing something. I think him being in the 13 jersey is the closest thing that we've got to that.
Pulling Arnett out of the 3, pulling Rashad Berry out of the 13. I mean, is like having a prime number, is that the great honor on this team? Like if you're in a prime number, that's great. If you're in like an even number, like I don't know, multiple of, say, 46 is all right. I'm not going to do the math. Any multiples of 23,
wow,
that's always bad.
You can't even do 46. The math from that.
Anyway, moving on to actual football talk. I think Rashad Berry and Luke Farrell are the 2 things I'm interested to see from the tight ends, because I would guess that they'll be on opposite teams. Farrell's the guy that Urban Meyer has talked about this spring as maybe having made a move, and Berry, we haven't seen anything from him this spring. We haven't heard anything about him this spring, but he's the kind of guy that he is the kind of guy that can make a play that will have everyone talking on the, make the play that everyone actually remembers as they're walking out of the stadium. Because these games are always kind of a little bit of a blur and everyone's sort of half paying attention, but there's always the one guy that makes just the really electric play, or, breaks 4 tackles and everyone is talking about that guy walking out of the stadium. Barry's one of those guys that could do that, because he had that game. He had the I think it was UNLV last year, where he had, that crazy like 38-yard touchdown where he broke like 6 tackles. He has the possibility of being that guy that kind of gets everyone buzzing. And if he does, then, that probably puts him kind of right back in that starting tight end conversation if he has a decent day on Saturday. But right now I'm really interested to see Luke Farrell because we haven't really seen anything of him. He came in very highly touted. Urban's talking him up this spring, so I'm interested to see what they do with him on Saturday.
And Shannon, as we all know, spring is the time when Ohio State throws to the tight ends.
Yes, they abuse them because they tease us and they want you to think that they're going to use them, and not going to happen during the regular season. So this is the only time they're going to be able to showcase their skills, basically.
So if you like the tight ends, and you'll see Rashad Berry, Luke Farrell, who earned champion status not this past, well, maybe this past scrimmage. We haven't talked to anybody, but the scrimmage before that one, he graded out a champion. And then you'll also see Jake Hausman out there, and some walk-ons filling out that lineup. But yeah, I think we need to see plays from Farrell and Hausman. We know what Rashad Berry is capable of. Urban's always talking about he needs consistency, and maybe he's finding that as the spring goes on. But he's one of those athletes that's fun to watch. So yeah, I want to see basically something from all of them because we have heard nothing. It's a mystery almost at this point. And this is spring, so this is when we get to see him. It's I don't know, swallows a Capistrano. Come back. This is the one time a year to see. This is when the tight ends bloom in Columbus, and it's
it's like the cherry blossoms in DC, the tight ends in Columbus.
So it's a beautiful sight, full bloom. People come from all around. Literally, they fill Ohio Stadium just to see the tight ends come home to Ohio Stadium. The offensive line for me, I want to see Wyatt Davis because we haven't seen him yet. He redshirted last year, so we never really saw any practices or anything from last year. Came in as a 5-star guy. I want to see what he looks like. Now we won't get to see much run blocking. We'll get to see how he is as a pass blocker, and I'll probably ask Kyle to do a whole bunch of breakdowns of every bit of minutia from the spring game that we can think of. Any of you guys out there want to see something broken down? Ask me. I am more than happy to ask Kyle to do that because he's going to watch this spring game about 40 times, and he'll be completely sick of it by the 6th time and complaining pretty loudly by the 12th time. So if there's anything you want to see broken down, hit me up, hit any of us up. We are more than willing to put Kyle through that because he loves it. The other guy that everybody talks about, Thayer Munford, it's the guy who Tony Alford was talking about this week. So those are my two guys. Tom, what are you looking for from the offensive line?
All of the young guys I'm kind of intrigued just to see because you've got the offensive line. When we get to watch practice, the offensive line is on the far end of the building. So they're like 70 yards away, and you're usually looking through a couple people and a couple different position groups to try and see. So a lot of times you really don't get to see much of anything of them. They have done some drills in front of us that we've gotten to watch, a little bit, but generally that's basically figuring out who's first team, who's second team, who's third team on a given series of plays. So I'm interested to see Max Ray, true freshman right tackle. He's potentially got a chance to be maybe backing up Thayer Munford this year, maybe if Brandon Bowen isn't the right tackle. I'm interested to see Matthew Jones, who coming in as a center, who's probably third team center at this point behind Brady Taylor and Josh Myers. But he's someone who both you and I had singled out when they first signed this class back in December, the early signees. He was the guy, Matthew Jones, who both you and I independently picked as the guy who was, maybe the most likely All-American in this class. So I'm really intrigued to see what they have with him just to start with, because he's not going to play this fall. He's almost guaranteed to redshirt. Virtually every offensive lineman does. But it is just going to be interesting to see what they have with him just as absolute raw material to start with. And then Josh Myers, the other guy I just mentioned, was a pretty highly ranked guard coming in and has been repping at center all spring. I think the consensus is basically he's second team behind Brady Taylor at center at this point. But again, I'm interested to see him. Let's see him on the field. He came in pretty hyped as a prospect. Had to spend all of last year learning to pass block. I'm going to be interested to see how he does with that on Saturday. Handling snapping, handling potentially line calls, which are probably going to be a total disaster with these sort of mismatched lines. But see how he does with snapping the ball. See how he does with pass blocking. Just to sort of get a sense for where they're going to be, because this is Brady Taylor's last year. So even if he's starting this year, you're going to have probably Jones or Myers as your center next year. So get an early look at what those guys look like. And
as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, Matthew Jones is the Dwayne Haskins of snapping. It's a perfect form snap right back to the quarterback. It's noticeably different than anybody else's. Based on the 7 to 8 seconds I watched of Matthew Jones snapping the ball. Even guys like Matt Burrell, Gavin Cupp, guys who are looking for a role, Burrell keeps getting sort of I don't want to say passed by, because everybody has an opportunity to start. But he's a guy who was going to be in the center mix, then wasn't. So I'm interested to see how he sort of responds, what he looks like. Gavin Cupp, a guy from my neck of the woods in Lipsick. I'm always going to be looking to see what he does. Shannon, what do you anything you're going to keep your eye on?
Yeah, I'm gonna break down the footwork and no, I mean I'm just hoping to see some. I mean, we're obviously not going to see much of Bosa and probably Chase Young and really aggressive defensive line. So I'm not sure what to expect to see out of the offensive line, except for the ability to hold a pass block, which is going to be detrimental for the upcoming season.
Well, and you mentioned Nick Bosa. I don't expect him to play much, if at all, maybe a series. But then why even play him? Because he's not allowed to hit the quarterback. So I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't even play, because he's also a guy who, the whole 2,000 rep club, he doesn't take as many reps in spring as other guys. So I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't even play. So when it comes to the defensive ends, everybody wants to see Chase Young. So do I. I want to see Jonathan Cooper. I think he could be very effective with his speed against whoever, that he's going against, especially if it's two-hand touch. Makes the defensive ends even more effective. Tom, do you expect some big sack numbers with this two-hand touch situation?
If it's two-hand touch, I think, everyone's going to end up getting ridiculous sack numbers for sure. Between two-hand touch and, random Yahtzee offensive lines, I mean, it's going to be, it'll be a total disaster. And people will have ludicrous sack numbers, and it won't really mean a whole lot. But on the offensive line, I'm kind of interested. I've been kind of banging the drum for Tommy Togiai all spring. Yeah. Just kind of, he seems like someone who could come in and be an immediate impact guy, except for the fact that there's just crazy depth at defensive tackle. But I'm really interested to see him, and I'm interested to see Antoine Jackson too, the JUCO who came in, who probably will be an immediate impact guy. He's I think finally pretty much healthy again. I don't know if he's 100%. We saw him when we were there for interviews on Monday, like dragging a tire, like walking backwards and dragging a tire up and down the sidelines after practice. So I don't know if that's like a rehab thing. I don't know if he's not 100%, maybe he's not going to get to go on Saturday, but if he does, I'll be interested to see what they have out of him, because he's someone who comes in with the possibility of being, someone who can really be a difference maker in the middle this year. even in a room that's that crowded.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I wonder how much he'll play, if at all, just because they've made it this far, getting him healthy, and it's almost like you don't want to jinx anything. You don't want to take that chance. I want to see if defensive tackle Malik Barrow is good to go. I know he was been slowed this spring, so is he healthy? I'm with you on Tommy Togi. I want to see what he does. He's every time you like his highlights, he's explosive. He's playing against dudes from Idaho, but he doesn't look out of place running drills with the Ohio State defensive line. I mean, last year, the Tommy Togi last year was Haskell Garrett. Let's see what he does. Now we'll get a chance to see him in the spring. Another guy that I want to see, Jayshon Cornell. How does he look at defensive end? How effective is he as a pass rusher? Does he look out of place, or does he look as comfortable as he says he is? And there's a whole bunch of names. I don't know if we'll get to see much of Robert Landers, which means we'll probably see more of Davon Hamilton. Shannon, your guy, Jerron Cage, are you looking forward to seeing him?
Definitely. I mean, he's one of the one, him, and just seeing how fast they are off the snap and everything.
Well, they better be fast off the snap, because when Matthew Jones is snapping the ball, now let me tell you about this Matthew Jones when he's snapping the ball. It's boom, it's there. So
See, you call him the Dwayne Haskins of centers, but really the way you talk about him, he's more the Tate Martell of centers when you really think about it.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you for that correction. You're absolutely right. Not only is his snap supremely fast, but if snaps could scramble, Tate Martell right there. Anybody else on the defense? There's so many, but there's also so many guys who aren't going to play. Yeah, Chase Young, like I mentioned, I don't know, Tom. How much do you think he's going to play? He needs snaps, in my opinion. But
he needs snaps. Bosa's not going to play, but I think you're going to see a decent amount of Cooper and Chase Young and Jayshon Cornell. I think you're going to probably see, not like 3/4 of a game or anything, but I think you'll probably see at least, middle of the second quarter with those guys, maybe halftime. Because, I mean, they all played last year, but this is only Young's second year in the program, and it seems like he's. You look at him and you think you think about the fact that we've been hearing about him for so long. It seems like he's been here a while, but it's just his second year. He's got to have that. He's got to get time on the field. He needs those reps. Nick Bosa doesn't, but Young does. I would bet you're going to see a decent amount of Cooper, even though he's been here a while, just because he hasn't been a starter. I bet you'll see a decent amount of Cooper, and I bet you'll see a decent amount of Cornell for the same reason.
Now, one year, it may have been a Jersey scrimmage rather than a spring game, but I believe Solomon Thomas had about 8.5 sacks because it was two-hand touch. So maybe I don't think they did two-hand touch in the Jersey scrimmage because that was serious stuff. Tom, is that record in danger in this game from any one player?
I'm going to say that I think it's always the always is it's a safe bet to bet under 8.5 sacks. I think that's generally. I mean, don't consider this like professional gambling advice, but if you're ever given the over under of 8.5 sacks per game for a player, I would strongly suggest betting the under.
I just hope there isn't a Chase Young fan out there who now will review this podcast and give us 1 star because of your hatred of Chase Young and your disbelief in his abilities to have a pretty good day on Saturday. This will be on your head, Tom.
This is definitely the worst thing I've ever done on this podcast.
What's the Mount Rushmore of worst things that Tom Orr has done on this podcast?
We're limited to 4.
Right,
we're limited to 4 in a true Mount Rushmore.
Join the podcast.
I'm not sure I can narrow it down.
Let's move to a position that we haven't talked about much lately, linebackers. I think we're going on about 6 weeks straight of linebacker heavy talk. And I don't know how much is settled other than we know Tough Borland is the best middle linebacker. We know that, and that's about it. We think we know that they want Baron Browning to win a starting job. And when we talk about what we're looking forward to this in this spring game with the linebackers, I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody because there are so many guys that we haven't seen. And we might not get to see much run stopping, but we'll get to see them in coverage, which I want to see Keandre Jones, how he does. Obviously, we want to see what Baron Browning, maybe that competition with him and Justin Hilliard. Last year, Justin Hilliard, I thought was fantastic in the spring game. Made some plays in the backfield, looked very comfortable. So maybe, Tom, do we see a little competition at middle linebacker? Do we watch that a little bit more carefully on Saturday to see those two and maybe see if we can pick a guy who's standing out between those two?
Yeah, I mean that's something to watch. I mean it's a little bit of a mystery right now, not knowing exactly who's going to be on which team. So, I mean, I would assume they'll probably try and divide those guys up so you've got one per team, so you can run them both at Mike if you want to. I'm kind of interested more in who they actually line up where. Like where do they have people right now when it's sort of a game that sort of kind of almost not quite matters? You know, we've seen them sort of shuffling guys around in practice. I think this at least will give you some sense where they sort of envision people stacking up and fitting now. And it's hard, you know, it'll be impossible to say who's first, who's second team, probably, you know, because they're going to be probably split up to some degree. But I'll just be interested in where guys are lining up. And then the other thing is seeing guys covering people in space. Let's see Keandre Jones try and cover Mike Weber or Antonio Williams or someone coming out of the backfield. Let's see, you know, does Baron Browning have to go run with a slot receiver at some point? You know, let's see what these guys can do in space, and because I feel like run support. You're kind of Ohio State linebackers generally are reasonably solid in the run game. If you can find an outside guy who can play in space, be a good outside, like a Joshua Perry, be a Darren Lee, where you can be outside, cover receivers, do that kind of stuff. That is what I'm kind of most interested to see, because I think that's going to start giving you a better sense for who's really going to fit where in this starting lineup this fall.
And like Bill Davis said this past week, when he was in the NFL, he told his scouts, I want 3-down linebackers, you know, guys who could play all 3 downs. And that's sort of what we're going to see in this game, being able to defend the pass. Like you said, we assume they can all stop the run. So seeing how well they defend the pass will give us an idea of maybe who the best 3-down guys are. Shannon, any players, anything you're going to be watching with the linebackers?
My biggest thing going into this was, like what you guys said, as far as the covering guys in space, something that seemed to be an issue a lot of times last season. And I'm hoping to see that we have the athletic talent, you know, the athletic abilities to be able to tighten that up for this next season.
Yeah, good luck to Dallas Gant when he's like matched up with DeMario McCall or something of that nature. That's a tough ask for him. So, I mean, that's a little baptism by fire. And he's another guy to watch, number 19, freshman out of Toledo, getting his first, not his first. I mean, he's a true freshman, so this is all new to him. But they say he's smart. He plays hard. He does everything that you want. Urban Meyer asks freshmen to do. So we'll see how he does on Saturday as well. Speaking of pass defense, that takes us to the entire secondary. Tom, you had something?
Nope.
Are you sure you don't have? I'm always interested to see Shaun Wade just because he had some moments where he looked really, really good in last year's spring game, just like Jeff Okudah did. And it would have been really, it would have been nice to see what he could have done last year had he stayed healthy and see where he is now compared to Okudah. And maybe they'd both be neck and neck, and we'd be assuming both were in the rotation this year. So this is he's a hungry guy. He's getting an opportunity now to prove that he belongs. He's getting more reps. They're all getting more reps because Okudah's out. And maybe that you don't need to give as many reps to Arnett. I don't know if that's the case. But at corner, I'm interested to see him. Marcus Williamson in the slot at the nickel, even to see how they handle the nickel. Although the secondary might be split up.
I'm interested to see the younger guys too. I mean, Tyreek Johnson and Seven Banks. I mean, this is this is our first chance to really watch these guys, and it's probably not going to be great. But last year with Okudah and Wade, it wasn't perfect. It's not going to be perfect with a true freshman in for his first spring. But if they look like they can kind of run with people, that will tell you something. If they look like they're not completely, totally lost out there, that will kind of tell you something. They're not going to be playing. Those guys are not going to be playing against Austin Mack, probably. They're going to be playing in the second half against, maybe walk-ons, maybe kind of second teamers. Maybe it's Elijah Gardner and going against Tyreek Johnson, or Jalen Harris going against Seven Banks. Like, that is going to tell you a little bit of something about both of those guys, about both the wide receiver and the corner. That's going to be kind of interesting to watch too. So, I mean, I know no one ever watches the second half of the spring game, but there's a lot of the interesting stuff is going to happen when the crowd has gone from 70,000 people to 15,000 people in the fourth quarter.
And that's what happened. That's what happened last year with Okudah and Wade, who had their ups and downs in that game, but they finished strong. And that's what Kerry Combs took from that more than the mistakes they made. They didn't get down. They finished strong, and they both made plays to secure the win, I believe. I know I'm pretty sure Shaun Wade made a play, knocked a pass down at the end. But they both also gave up touchdowns earlier in the game, I believe, and then they finished strong. And that if you could get that out of Tyreek Johnson and Seven Banks, that would be a good day, just to see them keep their heads up. Shannon, anything with the corners or the safeties that you're watching?
No, I'm excited to see these guys and see what kind of different coaching they might have picked up if, just in a short amount of time, having a different coach.
Like, are they looking back for the football?
Oh, no, it just, I don't know. We know that they were taught not to look back for the football when he was coach here before, so.
Well, interesting. I mean, one of the things that Taver Johnson did say was there are some things that he even before practice began this spring, he had seen some things on film, like before they get into their break or before they turn and run, that he could do, that they can get better at. So, I mean, they are going to be different in some ways. Far be it, I won't be able to pick it out. I'm not a cornerback expert. I'll leave that to Shannon.
It's pronounced Kyle.
Doing that.
It's pronounced Kyle.
You're going to be watching the footwork with the offensive line. You got your work cut out for you, Shannon. I'm also interested to see Isaiah Pryor, to see if he has that range, if he looks comfortable as the starter, if he is the starter, playing that deep safety. What kind of plays does he make? Because Malik Hooker was a playmaker, found plays to make, was around the football, and it just always happened. And do we see that out of Pryor? I have no idea. That's a lot to put on a guy. But, Tom, just the guys who always find themselves around the football. Like, even Nick Connor, before he was injured, he had an interception in the spring game. He was doing that all spring long. He was always around the football. Malik Hooker, always around the football. Even before he was a starter, as a redshirt freshman, they would talk about how, the guy finds the football. So, maybe we see something like that. Maybe.
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility that you can see like a little flash of some of those guys. And sometimes it means something and sometimes it doesn't. But in this case, I think it means more than if you see, a third string wide receiver go for 90 yards or 100 yards in the spring game. I think, the ball hawking, I think is one of those skills that I think you can, maybe read a little more into. I am interested in that boundary safety position because we sort of have assumed that Pryor was going to be the front runner, and they've talked about other positions where they've kind of penciled in guys, Thayer Munford at right tackle, where it was theoretically kind of a competition coming into the spring, and they've more or less said, yep, it's going to be Thayer Munford. And I feel like we have a pretty good grasp that Brady Taylor is going to be the center. That boundary safety position, I would have thought for sure. I think everyone just kind of went, yep, Pryor is going to fill in for that, fill that open safety spot. And it doesn't seem like they've completely given that job to him yet. That's maybe a little bit more of an open competition. So I'm interested to see who else back there is really giving him a run for his money, and if they're if it really is kind of still an open competition. I'm also interested to see at the other position Amir Reep on that field side backing up Jordan Fuller. Fuller was, I think, the only guy we saw in an orange no contact jersey or limited contact jersey earlier this week when we were in the Woody. So I would certainly assume Fuller's not going to play on Saturday. So you're probably going to get a pretty good look at Amir Reep, who they just moved from corner. I'll be interested to see what he does back there. I would assume there's probably going to be some growing pains. Again, this is just his second year, and now he's just switched positions. But he should get a pretty significant amount of time. So it'll be interesting to see how he does back there as well.
Yeah, I've got him written down as well because that field safety will match him up against the slot quite a bit. And, he can't, like you said, he was a corner. So let's see how he does in that coverage, basically being one-on-one against quick, fast receivers. The Pryor thing is interesting as well. Jocelyn Wint has been a guy who I think is at that spot as well. Also, sophomore Brendan White. So, yeah, I mean, let's see where all three of those are. And maybe Pryor can start. Or maybe they're just holding back on talking about him or praising him. I don't know. Or maybe he's not earning it. But we'll get to talk to Greg Schiano, Alex Grinch after spring and see where he was, what he did, maybe what more they wanted to see out of him. Is anybody looking forward to seeing anything on special teams? I didn't even put that in the rundown. I don't know how much,
Is there going to be any bottle flipping?
No, Drew Chrisman will probably just be holding and punting. Then, they'll go through the thing where they finally start to kick a field goal, and then they keep moving Sean Nurenberger back. So, we'll see how he does. All we've been told is that the kicking is going well. Tom, anything you're watching on special teams, I don't think there's going to be any returning. It's just going to be kicking.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I would be most interested to see on special teams is what the kickoff strategy this year, if they've tweaked that at all, how Blake Hallbill's doing with that, but I don't think we're actually going to get to see that on Saturday. I assume that they'll probably just kind of place the ball at the 25 or whatever. I mean, maybe they'll let him at least kick it, and then just everything is just sort of automatically a fair catch, and they just place it at the 25 and go from there, because they're not going to want to risk injury with a kick return. But I mean, that would be what I would be most interested to see. Maybe that's a good way for them to do it. Just you let him kick it, you line it up, you let him kick it, and then you just know no one's gonna hit each other. He just has to kick it, to the 2-yard line outside the numbers, and if he does that, great. But I don't know if that's what they're going to do. But that's what I would want to see.
Yeah, just let him get some work in. So that's basically the preview. But now it's time for the important stuff, where we pick the winning team, pick an MVP, and pick one other player who will stand out. Shannon, who do you have winning the game? The Scarlet team, or the Gray team?
I'm going to go with the Gray team.
Any specific reason why?
Just because it's going to be possible thunderstorm, so it might be a little gray out. So we're going to go with it.
And keep in mind, we do not know who's on any of the teams. We do not have rosters. This is basically all Tom, just intuition. And so what does your intuition tell you? Or even if it's not intuition, who are you taking?
Well, I went back and researched Urban Meyer's. Will be his 7th spring game at Ohio State. Scarlet won the first 2. Gray won the next 3. Scarlet won last year. So this is kind of the rubber match. This is the game that will decide the 7-game series of Urban Meyer spring games. So, I mean, this is about as high stakes as it gets. I'm going to go with Scarlet based on the momentum they have coming off of last year. Big 38-31 win last year. That was pretty huge. I know we all can name all of these scores by heart, but I think you got to go with Scarlet based on that momentum from last year. That's something that always plays a huge role in these spring games. The momentum carryover from last year.
That's why I'm going with Gray, because they remember last year, and you don't want that taste 2 years in a row. You want to get that taste out of your mouth.
They don't want to be fixing the
Tom, how many times
trees.
have we talked to these players about the spring game last year, and everybody, that's all they can ever talk about is, especially those guys on the Gray team, we can't let it happen again. We can't let it happen again. And I think they're serious. They're not going to let it happen again, whoever happens to be on that team.
After the Big Ten championship game, I remember going to that locker room at Lucas Oil Stadium and just to look in some of those guys' eyes that, yes, we just won the Big Ten championship, yes. But the spring game, man, that still hurts.
It's still real to them,
did they get rings for the spring game championship? I don't remember. If they don't, they should.
Now they get hard labor for losing.
Yeah, they get to gussy up Buckeye Grove.
Buckeye Grove, yeah.
My MVP, I am going to go with...
I got Tate Martell. You can't take him.
I'm taking Baron Browning.
I will go first. Jonathan Cooper. I think Coop's going to get some sacks. Tom went with Tate Martell because why?
He will probably get a decent amount of playing time in the second half. Probably get to run up some pretty decent stats. I would, and is probably not going to be in the game. I would guess that the Jonathan Coopers and Chase Youngs and a lot of those guys are going to be in the game in the first half when you've got Haskins versus Burrow. So I think there's a decent possibility that Martell's in there against, younger players or maybe some walk-ons, and his physical skills will enable him to, kind of really, really shine, really make some significant plays, potentially pile up some yardage against, young defensive backs, and also just it's kind of on brand that we have to kind of pick him. So there you go.
And what if he leads the team, whichever team that might be, to victory? That will also weigh heavily in the coveted Childress Thomas spring game MVP. Shannon, why are you going with Baron Browning?
Well, I'm just thinking that with the 70,000 fans, and what I'm thinking that there's going to be 40,000 sunburnt because they're going to be all on the east side of the stadium. So he's just going to be running around, and he's going to be focusing on all those fans in order to make a good name for himself.
I think, this is going to be an opportunity for him to make himself known, because you come in as a recruit and that's all you're really known for until you start making plays. I could see him having a big day. Picking one other standout, I'm going to go with CJ Saunders. I think he's going to get a bunch of playing time. And if he is, whichever quarterback he's with, I think he'll be able to get open, especially in the second half, and maybe get a score or two. Tom, who you got?
CJ Saunders is a great pick. Like a Tate Martell, CJ Saunders, like second half point explosion would be like a break the internet. That would be some good content. We're not supposed to root for anything, but it's a spring game, so it doesn't really count. So maybe we should just root for that. That would be fun. I kind of was going along the lines of your thinking with your initial pick of Jonathan Cooper. I picked Chase Young because I think he's a physical, just absolute physical freak, and is going to be matched up most likely against guys who are not his equal physically, with these sort of mismatched offensive lines that we've talked about a few times. One of the defensive ends is just going to go bananas on Saturday. And Cooper's a pretty good pick, but Cooper's been around long enough that I don't know how long he's going to play. Young is young enough that I think he's probably going to get most of the first half. So I think there's a decent chance that Chase Young kind of goes crazy and has probably, I'll say, just shy of that 8.5 sacks from Solomon Thomas. But if he gets 2.5, 3 sacks on Saturday in a half, that wouldn't be too crazy, and that would make him a pretty big standout to me.
Yeah, I'm liking your pick better than mine. Shannon, what do you got?
I'm actually going to go with Sheffield. I think that he's just, from what they're saying, being said from the spring practices so far. One day I'm going to learn how to speak, trust me. But I think he's going to take that step, and it's going to be like a no-fly zone where he's going to be covering.
Yeah, it almost feels like that, Tom, where he is transforming into that next guy up, right?
Yeah, we see that a lot with the development of these corners, where there's like a freshman year and they just play a little bit, and then there's a sophomore year and they play and everyone kind of hates them because they're not the good corner, they're the one that gets picked on, and then all of a sudden, sometime around that third year, they take a leap and it's like, oh wait, this guy's going to go in the first round next year. He seems like, he was not the traditional career path because he started at Alabama and then went to a JUCO. But, last year was his first year at Ohio State, and he was kind of the okay guy. He was okay, but had some penalties. He wasn't Denzel Ward, so everyone hated him for not being Denzel Ward. He seems like he's on that trajectory. He certainly has the speed to cover anybody he could possibly face. So if he has, I think, honestly, last year, I think it was a confidence thing with him where he felt like he was getting beaten. He kind of panicked and would get flagged for pass interference. With more repetition, with another year in the system, with now being the number one guy, maybe that builds that confidence up to the point where to the point where he really is ready to be that number one corner, be that Denzel Ward type corner. If he's just 85% of what Denzel Ward was last year, he's going to make a whole lot of money in the NFL this time next year, and Ohio State's going to have a pretty good defense this year.
Yep. And wow, we did it, an hour of spring game preview. So the next time you hear us next week, we'll probably have 4 hours of game recap. It'll be just tremendous. And we could put a whole bunch of too much stock into everything, Tom, that's kind of what that's our wheelhouse. That's the sweet spot to jump to a whole bunch of conclusions.
Was the plan for next week to do a position by position breakdown of the spring game? Like, we're going to do an hour and a half on the quarterbacks and then an hour and a half on the running backs. Is that what you want to do? Is that how you want to handle this? Because
Shannon, does that work for you?
You can never talk too much spring football.
I thought we were doing it for the Michigan.
I'm just going to say. All right. So that'll do it. Shannon, I know I cut you off on the last show. Is there anything else that you want to say before we go?
Yeah. When we were discussing Damon Arnett and Johnson wasn't giving him a lot of props, basically, do you think maybe that it's to reel back his confidence some, because he seems to, like, not just with the talking, but he might I don't know, think more, Granger thoughts of himself?
I don't think they ever want to dial back the confidence. I think maybe the idea that you sort of put the idea in there that you are still human. You are gonna you have to be accountable for your actions on the football field, and I think maybe that's more. I want you to be confident. You have to be confident as a corner, but you still also have to play smart and be smart. I think maybe that's more, but I don't know that. I don't think these coaches talk to the players through the media, because one thing that, and Tom, this, one thing that Urban always says, and Taver Johnson even said it when we talked to him last week, you never have to guess what they're thinking, because they are always going to tell you what they're thinking. And Taver said that you'll never have to guess, because I'm going to tell you if you're bad, if you're good. And so I don't see them like hiding or not praising somebody to get any other reaction other than they're just, this is what Damon Arnett does. He has game experience. And like I said on the last show, I could be reading way, way into that, Tom.
You could be, and if it was just one thing, I would say, like, yeah, maybe you are. But the changing the number, and then no one wanting to talk about changing the number, and some of the other stuff, there's a lot of smoke there that suggests that something's going on. We don't know what, and it would be, it would be pretty irresponsible to speculate about it. But it just seems like there are enough kind of separate signs there that there's something that's happening. That there's something that they're not happy about there. So, I don't think that they use us to communicate to them, because if they wanted to use us to communicate to the team, they would talk to us a whole lot more than they do. So that's clearly not, we are clearly not their chosen avenue to communicate with the team. So, but yeah, I think it's pretty clear that there's something going on, but that could be on-field stuff, that could be off-field stuff. It's kind of impossible to guess, with any sort of certainty at this point.
And I do remember sort of similar speculation when Dontre Wilson went from number 1 to number 2. My thought was, oh, he must be getting punished for something, and totally forgetting that actually he wore 2 in high school, so that's why he switched. So sometimes we make too much of the number, but we also, have been told that he doesn't really want to talk about the number change either. So that's what it is. So everybody, that's your spring game. Enjoy the spring game on Saturday. Go to it if you can. Get your tickets. Capacity, as Tom wrote on the site at the Ozone, about 70,000. There's other information there if you want to check it out in terms of what to expect with seating, or if you're looking to stream it, you're looking to all of the television information. We've got all of that stuff on the site, so check that out if you have any questions. And thank you all for listening. And make sure to check out the rest of the shows on the Ozone Radio Network. And we will be back on, probably Wednesday, with a whole bunch of recapping and who knows what else next week. So thanks for listening. We will talk to you later.
You have reached the deepest depths of the internet. If it is greatness you seek, you've come to the wrong show. If it's about not wasting time, don't worry, you're never going to get your time back. If it's knowledge you seek, just be aware, any knowledge gained here is going to be minuscule. So now it's time for Accost the Field with Tony Gerdeman on the Ozone Radio Network.
could tell me that tomorrow's alright. We could steal a car and leave